Welcome to the third day of the Innovation for International Development Expo. I am Diana Harbison, Assistant Director for International Development in the Global Engineering Programs and Partnerships Office. It is my pleasure to welcome you this morning and introduce myself and my colleague, Rhonda Hahn. We are overseeing the Shah Lab operations since Pallavi's departure, and we miss her, but we're excited for her in her new role, and we're grateful that she's not too far away. A quick reminder that we are recording today, so we invite you to have your camera on if circumstances and bandwidth allow. This is the third day of the Expo because we began 2 weeks ago, hosting 2 days of student-focused events. Those included panels of experts who spoke about career opportunities in this field. We also announced the winners of our poster competition. We received some very impressive submissions and congratulate all of our students for an amazing job on their posters. This week, the Expo will continue to connect the Purdue community to the international development community by hosting discussions covering topics such as needs assessment, iterative implementation, and scaling for impact. The Expo will end on Friday the 7th, where we will announce grants funding winners, and Dean Mung and Shah Lab benefactor Manu Shah will attend that event. We encourage you all to register for all the events this week, and my colleagues can drop that registration link into the chat box for your easy reference. Today, Seed Grant semi-finalists will present to a panel of judges. Design grant proposals are not presenting, given the straightforward nature of those funding requests. Both seed and design grant winners will both be announced on Friday. So allow me to explain how we'll proceed with today's program. Semi-finalist teams, your written proposals were evaluated by judges based on a number of criteria. It's on that basis that you were invited to present today. Today's smaller subset of judges will only be evaluating you on a fund, do not fund basis. Your judges for today are Purdue faculty and staff, Arvind Raman, Jerry Shively, George Chu, Sonak Pastakia, Ann Dare, Heidi Arola, Pallavi Gupta, Rhonda Hahn, and myself. And one point of clarification, Ann Dare is a former employee and Purdue student. She's now employed by USAID, but we're glad that she's able to serve as a judge this year. Judges, the link to the Fund Do Not Fund survey was provided to you. Rhonda can resend it if you're not able to access it for some reason. Semi-finalists, you were provided with your judging feedback from your written proposals and a PowerPoint template to use today. Each team will have no more than 10 minutes to present, and they were encouraged to respond to judging feedback they received, but you were given discretion to determine what feedback you wanted to respond to in today's presentation. Judges, we have less than 5 minutes for questions for each presenter, so please be concise and targeted when proposing and posing your question. I invite you to use the chat box to enter your question, and I will read them aloud if you prefer. Alternatively, you can use the raise the hand button and function, and I'll call on you to ask your question to avoid overlapping speakers. Given time limitations, I will give verbal time warnings along the way to keep us on time. Purdue PIs were asked to invite their implementing partners and to include them in presentations if time zones and schedules allow. As such, I would like to welcome all of our partners and thank you for joining us today. Thank you also for sharing your challenges and to give us the opportunity to work with you to try to overcome them. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge SEWA, Self-Employed Women's Association, in particular, who's working proactively to address the overwhelming needs that India is facing and surrounding countries. They're working to distribute masks, provide education about mitigating COVID transmission, and providing quarantine centers for COVID patients. If you would like to support their efforts or connect them to resources, please feel free to contact them directly or contact me and I can connect you to them. SEWA, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, and we're thinking of you and all our colleagues, friends, and family in India right now. If I could briefly get a positive confirmation from everyone that there are no questions about how today's program will run. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Let's begin with our first semifinalist team presentation. I would like to invite the Technology to Empower Farmers to Make Irrigation Decisions team.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And first and foremost, I would like to thank the judging panel for giving us opportunity to share our thoughts on a project that was proposed to reduce uncertainty in decision making by farmers in India. And the project was developed by combining two problem statements, number 13 and 16, both submitted by the Self-Employed Women's Association, popularly known by the acronym SEWA, which is a 1.5 million strong non-governmental organization comprising of poor self-employed women workers from the informal economy across 16 states in India. I would like to thank Rehana Ben along with several of her colleagues from SEWA and Dr. P.M. Chauhan, who is the registrar of Junagadh Agriculture University, for joining the presentation and extending their support. Finally, I would also like to thank my other team members for their enthusiastic participation right from conceptualizing this project to this day. Agriculture depends on the vagaries of rainfall for most of the small and marginal farmers in several parts of India. And considering the importance of agriculture in the economy, the government has given priority to development of agrometeorological advisory services before independence since 1930s. And the importance of agrometeorological advisory services can be understood from the fact that it helps about 40 million farmers with decision making in crop and livestock management. And an impressive 4-tier structure exists that comprises of meteorological department, agricultural universities, extension centers, and the information dissemination through mass media. And a very impressive growth has taken over a period of time. And since 2011, the growth has mostly been initiated on an experimental basis to generate weather forecast at sub-district level. And when I say sub-district level, I basically intend to suggest that at a village level, those forecasts, particularly weather forecasts, are being directed. But what we learned through discussions is that those weather forecasts do not necessarily accompany with agricultural advisory. So they cannot be used by small and marginal farmers. So what the team Purdue did was to get involved with our project partners in several discussion sessions. And that allowed us to have a preliminary understanding of the challenge that we intend to address through the proposal. So one of the understanding was that at village level, weather forecasts are not available. The advisory services need to be extrapolated from the block level to the village level. The farmers at the small and marginal level, they suffer heavy losses either due to rainfall being very heavy or the drought conditions prevailing in the area. And then in order to assess crop water requirements, they do not have a reliable way of knowing as to when to irrigate, how much to irrigate, and leading to losses by those who cannot afford to lose even a percentage of their total yield. And based on the preliminary discussions, we identified two major goals. One was to develop a technological framework for developing and implementing agromet advisory services at the village level so that it can be used by small and marginal farmers. The state that we selected was Gujarat, and it was because the idea was proposed by SEWA with Gujarat as their area of concentration. And then we also want to identify issues that need to be taken into consideration for scalability and transferability of the proposed technological framework. The team Purdue is uniquely qualified to address the identified goals as we have more than 100 plus years of collective professional experience in agricultural systems, technology development, the meteorological and watershed modeling, terrestrial and aerial remote sensing, and ICT in agriculture. And on top of that, we have been working for more than 15 years with Indian counterparts comprising of several different scientific organizations in India. The technical expertise of Purdue team is very well complemented by the project partners, namely the two agriculture universities in the state of Gujarat. And these universities each have a Krishi Vigyan Kendra, that is a farm science center, which is staffed with agricultural scientists so that they can help us in generating agro advisory services at the village level. And based on the preliminary understanding, we are very confident that they will also provide us in arranging help to enable Team Purdue to collect field level sensor data that will be further analyzed by the Purdue team. And the team SEWA mostly comprises of women farmers that belong to rural families, and they rely on agricultural production for their livelihood. And they will be helping us identify small and marginal farmers who will help in evaluating the technological solutions that Purdue team is going to bring to bear. And based on the initial discussions with project partners, we were able to chalk out a work plan that includes identifying pathways to engage and empower our partners and towards the goal of making crop production profitable for small and marginal farmers in the state of Gujarat. And the focus will be on complementing agromet advisory services with satellite remote sensing data, and that expertise is brought by Dr. James. And then we will also be revolving discussions around the use of forecast models to scale agrometeorological advisories to be useful at village level, and that will be led by Dr. Dev Niyogi. Then we will also be testing out a number of technologies that are required for the success of projects, such as development of IoT testbed that will be led by Dr. Suranjan Panigrahi, and then also a way to disseminate all the information that will be developing at the village level, and that effort will be led by myself. And then we expect a number of outcomes, such as a technical summary of proposed approach, then a proof of concept assessment using a weather forecast model, then a technological framework of IoT testbed for acquiring a number of data sets so that we can generate village level and field level data that can be used by farmers for making decision about irrigation. And then we also plan to evaluate a prototype design for tower-based or drone-based instrument for local remote sensing for assessing soil moisture level, and an existing app that my team has developed for conditions in Peru will also be evaluated for its integration with agromet advisory services so that we can provide advisories on maximizing farm profitability based on a number of criteria. And most importantly, all these results will be shared with all the team partners, and their feedback will be assessed on a timely basis.
Dr. Saraswat, we have about a minute left.
So this is my last slide. So we understand that there are several standalone components or approaches exist, and the judging panel also brought some approaches to our consideration, and thank you for doing that. It was brought to us during the initial discussions as well. But we also feel, based on, again, discussions with our partners in India, that we still lack some kind of an organic integration of those components because there has been a lack of participatory approach in trying to bring all those solutions to really address the unique problems faced by small and marginal farmers. And we are very hopeful that by working together in a participatory approach and a vast experience that the Purdue team brings to this project proposal, we will be able to come up with a model that can be tried out in other parts of of India. And then because the Indian conditions are not unique, there are several parts in the world that also face those similar challenges. We are very hopeful that we will be able to keep marching forward and take the outcome from this project to the rest of the world. So with this, I would like to thank you all for your time. And there is time for questions and answers. I will be glad to answer them.
Thank you. And judges, we have about 5 minutes, and I see that Sonak has already asked the first question. Can you speak a bit more about the process for implementing your test prototype with SEWA after it is designed? How much budget will be allocated to testing the prototype?
You see, we have set aside approximately $30,000 for implementing various project proposals or solutions that we have identified, and we are very hopeful that with the help of the university partners, we will be able to test out those proposed solutions.
Thank you. Another question is, what is your plan for preparing and seeking continued funding for this work, since the seed grant is only a small investment?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that. Yes, as I already indicated that the development of agro advisories is a high priority item by the Ministry of Earth Sciences in India. So we are very hopeful that once we have a model framework ready, we would be able to find partnerships from the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Then the Department of Science and Technology is also giving a lot of funding for bringing new technologies in the space of agriculture. So that is another potential funding source that we are looking at. Then there are several international funding organizations that are looking for supporting such kind of activities, and we would like to reach out to all these identified sources for continuing these activities.
Another question, does the comparative analysis of the existing solution feature in your next steps? Organizations like WOTR have been successful in this space. It would be good to know their failure and stress points.
Definitely, and that is the main reason we wanted to get into a workshop kind of an environment where we will invite all the other stakeholders who have successfully developed components of this technology to learn from their experiences and also factor in some of the challenges that they faced in coming up with the solution approach. So thank you for asking that. Yes, we were in fact exposed to these kind of some of these kind of challenges during the initial discussion phase as well, and we are cognizant of this fact.
Given SEWA's members are the potential beneficiaries, it may be important for the Purdue team to have gender representation. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. In fact, yes. When the team was being proposed, we were very strategic in terms of what kind of expertise is needed. But when we got feedback from the judges, we have deliberated within our team, and we have identified some other faculty colleagues who will bring us the gender balance that the judges were also looking for. So sorry and thank you. Sorry that we were not sensitive at the time of team formation, but thank you for bringing this fact to our notice, and we have the plan to address it.
Okay, we have about 1 more minute left. Do judges have any questions? Okay, thank you very much for a very concise presentation and answers. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
So moving on, we'd like to invite the low-cost water defluoridation panel and team to present now.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me pull up this here. Okay, for some reason it's not letting me do a full screen with share. Let me stop sharing here.
Sure.
Try this again. Okay, I'm actually going to pull up the, sorry about this, the PDF slides.
That's fine.
Hopefully I can share this, everybody. Great, is this
Yeah, that looks great.
open? All right, thank you so much. I would like to thank the judges as well for giving us this opportunity to present today. I would also like to thank my team members, Chad Jafford and George Zhao. We are all in civil engineering and environmental and ecological engineering here at Purdue. And we're excited for this opportunity to also collaborate with Ms. Rayana Ben, who is also at the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, in India. And we are very much interested in developing a technology to basically provide clean drinking water to the community members of Dungapur, Rajasthan. And in order to obtain this clean water, create a technology for water defluoridation. So, so our main challenge in this proposed project is to really address the high concentrations of fluoride that are found in many drinking water sources in India and as well as in other countries. And our proposed project really centers on the region, northwest region of India in the state of Rajasthan, as you can see sort of pointed out on the left-hand side of this graph, where they have groundwater serving as their drinking water source. And this groundwater contains 1 to 4 milligrams per liter of fluoride, which is several factors above the regulatory limits of 1.5 milligrams per liter. And so this is of concern because fluoride levels, high fluoride levels, can really cause detrimental health effects, including dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis. And so this level of fluoride, of course, needs to be removed to achieve global health security for this region of India. And so we really want to collaborate strongly with our project partner, SEWA, to address this critical need, to develop a method of fluoride removal in drinking water that is chemical-free, affordable, and requires low maintenance, which will be used by community members in many of the small villages in this area. We plan to offer a solution where we construct 2 different cost-effective and affordable defluoridation treatment systems, and also use a fluoride monitoring method that these local community members can use effectively to essentially confirm that their system is operating correctly. So essentially, we want to, of course, work very closely with SEWA and continue our collaboration in this way to meet their needs in developing this technology to achieve clean drinking water, which is essentially fluoride free. And in order to do this, we would like to exchange data on a regular basis to understand the water quality, real-time water quality conditions on the ground in this area, develop these 2 technologies, and create operation and construction manuals so that these technologies can be easily deployed and implemented on the ground within each household, and also develop these detection techniques to measure fluoride concentrations. And so this collaborative approach will lead to us developing 2 defluoridation technologies. And I won't go into the top 2 because essentially what we wanted to show here is that we considered a lot of them, but for reasons due to high cost and high energy, they were not selected and do not really serve as an attractive approach. However, we wanted to focus on electrodialysis and solar distillation, the bottom 2 treatment technologies, because they're chemical free, they are low cost and easily run, and are very effective at removing fluoride. And this first treatment system, okay, is an electrochemical system, which essentially applies a potential between 2 electrodes to remove fluoride across a membrane to acquire clean water. And the basic point I want to make here is that it can actually service a number of people. So a large group of families and not just necessarily one household. I would like to move to treatment system 2, which is basically a solar distillation system, which we want to use to evaporate water using concentrated solar heat using a parabolic solar still, which will condense the water and then heat the water and then condense it, and then essentially allow us to obtain water that is free of dissolved solids, including fluoride. And so with that, of course, we want to also have a fluoride detection technique, which will be a colorimetric technique, which can be easily deployed there. And in this case, the fluoride will react with 2 chemicals and it'll induce a color response. So this color change can be easily a nice cue, which would be proportional to the fluoride concentration. So local community members can easily see what the fluoride concentrations are and how their system is performing. And I would like to sort of close by saying that we believe that there's a lot of potential to have impact in this community, and this system can be scaled up fairly easily. These 2 treatments were selected because they have considerable flexibility. One has higher flow rates and a little bit higher capital cost, whereas the other is has a lower energy and capital cost with slightly lower flow rates. So we sort of have a centralized versus decentralized approach. But this really allows us to have community resilience, because if one system fails, then we can obviously have another system as a backup to meet the drinking water needs of this community. And of course, we also strongly believe that these strategies are applicable to other parts of India and developing countries. So we think that the scale up could be easily implemented. Outcomes are to design 2 defluoridation systems, acquire data on system performance. And we want to note that we would really like to travel, but currently at this time, due to COVID-related concerns, we are a little bit apprehensive to put this into the proposal at this time. And so to close, I would like to say that we have, one of our co-PIs has also worked with the Global Engineering Program to successfully implement a drinking water treatment system in Colombia, and we're excited for the opportunity to do this again in India. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Judges, any questions? There's questions coming in fast and furious. Just a second. First solution is at the community level. Will it be installed at the water source like hand pump wells? If so, how are you accounting for the depleting groundwater level that often results in moving the hand pump sites?
Thank you. This is a great question. So we will not have these technologies next to the hand pump locations, if I understand this question correctly. The water will need to be moved from the groundwater well, similarly as they've done before, primarily because the water needs to, the clean water will essentially be available directly at the household location. And so the goal really is to keep that infrastructure in place where people are still moving the contaminated groundwater away from the well and into their house where it is then treated. To address the second question regarding the groundwater level, I presume this is a sort of a systemic problem that occurs with just drinking groundwater from the communities which has existed prior to this treatment technology. So I kind of feel, I think we feel that that might be a separate issue. Essentially, at the end of the day, we want for the community to have access to clean water, and the groundwater source is really the best option to make that happen.
This is Chad Javert. I'm one of the co-PIs on this. What Amisha said is true. The groundwater table issues are more of an ag issue, because if you look at the amount of water that's used for drinking versus the amount of water that's used for other things, including production of crops and things like that, it's very small. So our amount of water is a small dent in the total. It's really how do you do agriculture different to reduce the water use in the area? So ours is predominantly for health, human health, because of removal of fluoride from the water
Thank you, Chad.
that they're already using.
Okay. The next questions are, what considerations will or have been made for the quantity of water the system should be able to produce, and the household level disinfection approaches that may complement or conflict with the proposed defluoridation technology?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. Anne, actually, I'll invite you. Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, it's a two-part question. So the first part of the question is, what kind of considerations have or will be made for, how much water do you need to produce out of the system over a period of time in order to serve, whether you're talking about a household or a community center or a school. So that's part one. And the second part of the question is whether there are other sorts of disinfection technologies or, other sorts of, treatments going on that are typical in the proposed pilot region that may, you may want to consider complementing your whatever defluoridation technology you pursue, or that may conflict or confuse a user on, the steps that need to be taken to ensure clean drinking water.
Okay, so to address the first part, so we really wanted to establish two technologies that would have sort of two different loadings in terms of water flow rates, et cetera, so that essentially we could implement, for example, the electrochemical filtration system into a school that would need higher flow rates, whereas the solar distillation system could be used more at the household level, for example, if depending on their water needs. So that was really the intent there, to have this flexibility to deal with these differences in water demand. And for the second question, so typically a lot of the disinfection technologies that are out there on the ground that are low cost, that serve these developing countries, tend to be, would be something like chlorine disinfection and things like that. But for us, SEWA wanted a chemical-free approach here that would still disinfect the water. And we believe both of these technologies would still would of course disinfect the water as well. So then applying a chemical to disinfect the water is not really needed here. And yeah, so that was sort of our philosophy there.
So we have about 1 minute left, and so I'm going to ask a two-parter, but as one question, which is how will you measure the health outcomes of the system? And then how will you ensure sustainability of the system? Who's going to pay for it to continue to be used?
So the health outcomes, I think, if this is very much directed by the regulatory limits that are implemented in the country. So all of those regulatory limits are based on a comprehensive assessment of health outcomes. So if we are able to meet that regulatory limit and below, we feel that that would be a successful outcome for us in terms of meeting the health needs of the community. And the second part of the question, sorry,
Sustainability of the system.
Sustainability of the system. Both of these systems are fairly low maintenance systems in regards to the capital equipment that is needed, and also the cleaning that is required. And so we actively tried to select technologies that wouldn't be such a huge burden for these communities. So if they can be cleaned easily and be sustainable, but if not, they are low cost. So replacement parts can, of course, be added to these treatment technologies easily.
Okay, thank you. I do encourage you to look through the chat box because there were quite a few questions I couldn't get through today, but I do encourage you to take a look at those.
Diana,
yes.
Sorry, Rihanna Ben by mistake messaged me directly. She wanted to contribute. If you can invite her.
Sure, please.
Thank you, Diana, for supporting SEWA's effort in the beginning with reference to the work which we are doing for the COVID affected members. And I would just like to come in over here for the defluoridation technology. Would reflect upon few of the questions which have been asked by the judges. And so like one of the judges have asked about the depleting, say, water levels, but then we have been working in the area on the groundwater level as well. And we are working on how do we revive and restore the traditional ponds and wells, so that the so that would also contribute towards, of course, like lessening the fluoridization, but then we definitely need, say, the defluoridation unit. So at one end, we are working on how do we, work on the ground, increasing the groundwater level and the quality of water. And at the same time, like when we are with the Purdue University in this problem statement, what we need to address is how could the system which we are working on could be affordable and sustainable in a way that the community themselves could be, say, the one who could be trained as, say, managing those resources. And so as we wanted it to be very, say, cost effective and which could be operated by the community as well. And at the same time, when we are talking about how do we say, one of the question is also how do we make it say affordable, or say the continuity of it would be in sustainability, would also that we have, say, water committees, wash committees in that area, and then the wash committees in each of the household contributes a bit every month or monetarily, in a kind or in cash every month or in few months, so that the wash related activities could be done from those funds as well. And so as like we plan for the sustainability as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you also for contributing. We greatly appreciate you joining us today and speaking up and answering questions. Thank you very much to the team. We are going to move on to the next team's presentation, managing the impact of fall armyworms.
So we're just trying to get this screen properly shared here. Great, thank you very much. I'm going to be presenting today on behalf of Dr. Bello Bravo, who is the team lead, but she is giving a presentation to another funding agency today at the exact same time. So I'm tasked with handling this. So 3 faculty members from Purdue University are involved with this. Dr. Bello Bravo is the lead on this project. Dr. Christian Krupke and myself are also playing roles on this project as entomologists. We're in collaboration with World Concern, and we appreciate our partner being on today. Also, we're working directly with industry, with Ag Biotech, who's also working in South Sudan, where this project is focused, dealing with the exact issue of fall armyworm control. And we're working with global experts that deal with the issues of fall armyworm control. So the project that I'll talk about today is associated with creating an enabling environment to support smallholder farmers in South Sudan towards managing fall armyworm minimalization of crop losses. If we think about international development, we have to think within the context of there's 3 essential components. There's technology, there's enabling policies, and there's educational technologies or approaches that support people to be able to move forward and use those technologies effectively in the environments they're working in. The program which I'm representing today that Dr. Bello Bravo is the director of is a Scientific Animations Without Borders program, which is a 10-year-old program that is now at Purdue University. And it is a system of scaling educational content. It's a 10-year-old program that is around how to develop educational content to support technologies or appropriate technologies that can be scaled in a developing nation context. It is research for scaling to pass off to partner groups so that they can scale content in very large levels. To date, she's published over 35 publications including RCT experiments. These RCT experiments are done in order to provide the evidence so that other scaling partners like USAID or FAO have the firm data that they need to scale these type of educational content in order to have impacts in the systems they're working in. We're also collaborating with World Concern, and they've had a long-term track record of working in South Sudan with farmers. So we feel this is an excellent collaborative interaction. Additionally, Scientific Animations Without Borders program has over a 4-year experience at working on educational interventions for fall armyworm in over 24 countries and 50 different languages, and has worked extensively with USAID around these educational interventions around scouting. South Sudan is a post-conflict country that lacks the regulatory structure and commercial capabilities at present to manage invasive pests. So by default, the policies that are being used are policies that are essentially FAO and USAID policies in terms of what are the logical sets of solutions. Fall armyworm is a serious but manageable pest in maize, and there's been over 100 years of research in the Americas on how to most effectively control this crop. Within the context of South Sudan, the most logical approach to control it is what's called a baculovirus spray solution. Maize is a critical food security crop in South Sudan, and farmers need safe use pesticide control solutions now. This type of approach is a highly effective approach. FAO, CEMET, USAID, and Ag Biotech, which we've all worked with, have worked in South Sudan to fill the short-term need of this control strategy by working with private sector to provide this biopesticide and farmer training to meet this threat. So there is already a technology, a widget, a solution in order to effectively control this pest. There's no need to reinvent that widget. Fall armyworm virus or Phologens MPV virus is a safer use biopesticide. It's very safe for human use. It only impacts fall armyworms and does not impact the environment in any negative way. highly safe control technology. It's naturally occurring, and farmers can be trained to actually make their own viruses. Very simple strategy, but it can also be purchased through systems that have been set up by USAID, FAO, and Ag Biotech in the country. For pests like fall armyworm, what the real challenge is the timing of treatment. It's critical to get the best level of control in the field. So farmers need to know exactly when, how, and where to treat. The challenge in this system is an educational intervention. It is not the widget that is the concern. The widget exists, but how to effectively train farmers in order for that widget to be properly used is the challenge. When farmers fail to treat properly, they may treat this situation properly, they may think the solution does not work. A key finding from FAO and USAID initiative, which was headed by the consultant that we're working with, Joe Husing, as well as the fall armyworm campaign that he ran well as part of his efforts at USAID, was that farmers missed this control window for effective control of the pest. So what is necessary is teaching at large scale farmers how to scout and effectively treat this pest and this challenge in a post-conflict nation in the times of COVID. So SAWBO is specialized in working in a virtual network and virtual systems to create content, pass off to other groups, and also do RCT experiments to show and demonstrate and determine strategies of using effective educational interventions in order to increase the effectiveness of outcomes of a particular strategy. So SAWBO makes what are called digital animations, and we place them into local languages, and these are made with experts in a way where they show the farmer exactly what that you do at the exact right time. And Dr. Bello Bravo has done previous studies over multiple year adoption studies showing that when these type of techniques with other IPM strategies are interjected into systems in rural areas in Africa, that farmers A, learn, and B, we can get very high adoption rates. So in a recent publication from HERS showed 89% adoption rate, that farmers understood how to use the IPM strategy of a given technique and that they adopted it and shared it with others. But what is critical is an RCT experimental approach to provide the scientific evidence base for the use of this particular type of animation around how to use these viral sprays in a training approach for future investments and scaling. So our experience has been an RCT experiment leads to the evidence that other organizations will do much larger scale investments in order to use these to scale in countries at a much larger level. And we've had the experience with this with USAID. Once we have the RCT experiments done, show the evidence, we've had past experience of USAID investing in the scaling of that content. But without the evidence base for investment for scaling, it's difficult, if not impossible, for other organizations to take this content and run with it for scaling. Now, in South Sudan, the legal framework is already in place for Phthalogin MPV to be used by farmers. So all of the legal frameworks are in place. Our partner, World Concern, was instrumental in drafting and reviewing our proposal. They have considerable experience with working in farmers in that particular country, and they have in-country knowledge and expertise to assess details of the approach and work with us in the experiments that are necessary to provide evidence towards scaling. They have the capacity to implement the program and would be surely involved in scaling once completed. Our approach is create the evidence, create the content, pass off to other scaling partners that can invest. It becomes very sustainable because other partners take these things and run with them. It's research for passing off for scaling by other organizations. So
we have about 1 minute left.
Okay, then I'll wrap up very quickly. So post-award, they have every capacity to scale this content. So we expect the research will show that the digital animations in local language can increase the effectiveness of these interventions. We can build confidence in farmers. When they see others are using this effectively, they will adopt seeing as believing. Farmers' willingness to pay is critical. We're working with markets to use a scaling approach. Farmers in South Sudan need markets and products to sustainably manage this approach. We need an evidence base for others to invest, and RCT experiments are critical for this. But World Concern will be uniquely positioned to capitalize on this post-awards. Finally, SAWBO content is given out freely for others to scale far beyond our own borders and our own program. Thank you.
Thank you, judges. I see one of the first questions. If the educational intervention is via mobile devices, does the needed infrastructure exist? Bandwidth, mobile uptake? Also, is it a one-way dissemination, or are there feedback question loops embedded in the educational intervention?
So this process, this system is technologically agnostic. So it can be delivered through cell phone based, it can be delivered through Pico projectors. So we deliver the content to other organizations that can deploy it as they see fit. So in areas where there's low bandwidth, organizations can go in and have classically gone in and use Pico projectors or tablets to display and use this information. So it can be, it's essentially agnostic in that sense. So there are multiple mechanisms and pathways. And just for transparency's sake, we currently have a $1.6 million USAID grant to explore all pathways that can be used in countries for people who do and don't have access to these type of technologies. What we have found is there's a significant amount of people that can access through WhatsApp strategies, but there's also a significant amount of people that will gain access through extension presentations. Experimental evidence by Dr. Bello Bravo has also demonstrated that two-way flow of knowledge is the most effective approach to go. So the educational animations should be used first in an educational program, followed by the basis of a discussion with extension agents to optimize impact. So because we work virtually, we can also have a two-way or multiple-way flow of information and knowledge to improve on the educational content and to share best practices of how to use such content towards impact.
Thank you. Barry, did you give any other thought to other types of evaluation methods and approaches, since randomized control trials are the gold standard, but it often results in other questions that you didn't get to answer during the RCT process. So did you consider other approaches?
So Dr. Bello Bravo has developed a series of strategies, and one is this first RCT approach that is a very much a quantitative approach, but mixed in it with this qualitative approaches that allows one to address those sort of things that you don't get at with that quantitative approach. So readaption of things, how people are using this content, how do they share with other people. So it allows us to address, or her to address, really qualitative issues. The RCT approach is the gold standard. We have every capacity to do an RCT experiment within the context of this. It's very similar to strategies that have been taken in other countries by her program, but we can and will take other strategies around this that are very qualitative as well. But these can be piggybacked on the RCT.
Okay, thank you. How will local, regional, cultural contexts be considered and incorporated into the development of the content?
Well, actually, that's probably about the easiest part, is we can go back and forth. All content is created virtually. In fact, in a COVID-19 world, we've been busier than ever. So we can work with local groups virtually to get, what do things need to look like virtually? What do the characters need to look like virtually? What does the environment need to look like virtually? We have consistently worked for the past 10 years with groups around the planet to make sure everything is very localized. So that is something that we do routinely. So I'll give you an excellent example. We made an animation a few years back with a group in Ethiopia, and they wanted particular cultural groups in a particular region. We were able to easily go back and forth and make sure it looked very visually accurate for the environment. Plus, content can easily be placed in numerous languages. So content for SAWBO is currently available in over 200 languages. In fact, the previous SAWBO animation is now in about, for Fall Armyworm is in about 50 different languages. Dr. Bello Bravo's work also over the last 10 years has shown that you don't have to be that culturally specific with animations. People will be willing to learn from content that looks a little generic. However, we have every capacity to localize.
Okay, we have about a minute left. Any final questions from the judges? Oh, if time permits. Since agriculture is frequently subject to government oversight, does the team have any plan to connect it back to local agricultural policy, feedback, and recommendations?
Oh, absolutely. So this would be one of the goals of the program, is to connect with local government agencies and entities, because they will be Co-creation with them is critical for buy-in so that we can subsequently be involved with them in terms of deployment. So it's one of the things that we specialize is in working with these groups in a virtual capacity in order to bring them in an inclusive manner. So we do that routinely. So, but as you're well aware, South Sudan is a post-conflict area, and we would do everything we could to engage with whatever government mechanisms are locally available. And our partner group, of course, has the capacity to do that. However, the company we're working with has been working in South Sudan for quite some time, as has the consultant. So they have a lot of connections with local government and non-government entities, as well as considerable work with FAO and USAID.
Okay, final question. Do you have any preliminary evidence on the reasons for lack of uptake, excuse me? We're guessing that it's simply, it's not simply about lack of education that the animation addresses. Rather, can you convince us that the animation is key to addressing the barriers to implementation? Because we're guessing that it has more to do with the upfront costs of fall armyworm intervention.
So the thing is fundamentally is if you're going to introduce a widget, you will need an educational supporting mechanism. So this is a very early stage of introduction of this particular product into the country. There's been at least 1 year of use of it in the country. There has been uptake by farmers, but the gap and the challenge has been, how do you educate farmers to do this? So the next step is they can get farmers educated, but the catch is how are we going to scale it? This type of approach can be scaled and is an educational intervention that allows for scaling and adoption of the technique. And to be straight up blunt about it, I actually candidly completely disagree with the question. We have plenty of experimental evidence showing that if you first educate people in these strategies and they understand them very cleanly and clearly in these technologies, they are much more likely to adopt. And in fact, the publication that's shown in the bottom of the corner here was a given agricultural technology where people had the actual widgets sitting in their home, had them sitting in their home for decades. But when we did educational interventions to show them how they could use jerry cans in order to store grains, we were able to go from a 0% adoption rate, because people didn't even realize they could use this intervention, to an 89% adoption rate in those people that were trained, and those people passed off the 10 other, at least minimal of 10 other people afterwards. So actually, I flatly disagree. I think education is the starting point in order for people to adopt widgets. You cannot introduce widgets into a system without the proper supporting educational content.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your time as well, Barry. We're going to move on to our next team presenters, identifying asthma triggers in the home. Brandon, if you want to take us away.
Thank you, Diana and Rhonda, for organizing this event. So I'd first like to introduce myself and our team. So my name is Brandon Boor, and I'm an assistant professor of civil engineering at Purdue. And I previously worked on a Shah lab funded project in Nandi, Kenya, looking at indoor air pollution in biomass burning kitchens. Also on our team is Professor Sa Liu. She's an assistant professor of health sciences. Sa and I are presently working together on an indoor air quality project in southern Indiana. Collectively, we have expertise in indoor air quality, ventilation, human exposure assessment. We also have our undergraduate EPICS team, the Global Air Quality Trackers, GAQT. They've been working on our project in Kenya for the past several years, and they will be part of this project if it is funded. Our community partner is the Bronx Community Health Network, and we have on the call today 2 members of BCHN, Tashi Kodin, who's the Director of Programs, and Renee Witzke, who is a Community Health and Program Developer for BCHN. And we have been working with BCHN for the past few months in development of this proposal. So as a bit of a background, asthma is a major environmental health challenge throughout the United States and also globally. Within the United States, about 25 million people have asthma, and rates of asthma have been steadily increasing over the past few decades. Globally, it's about 340 million, and it disproportionately affects low-income communities. And this is due to a number of reasons. It could be the condition of the home environment that is not ideal and is associated with a greater prevalence of asthma triggers. We know that in the Bronx, where the BCHN is based, the asthma mortality rate is about 3 times that of the entire New York City. So the homes in the Bronx, they're aging, they're old, they're not in the best condition, there's poor ventilation, there's inadequate control of moisture and humidity leading to mold growth, there's localized outdoor and indoor air pollution sources that need to be addressed, and this is all leading to higher rates of asthma. So BCHN has been working on a home-based asthma program to try to address the high rates of asthma mortality in the Bronx. And part of this program is doing environmental assessments of the home environment to identify asthma triggers. And they came or reached out to the Shah lab seeking virtual or remote techniques to identify asthma triggers. So the CDC and the EPA have identified that home visits to identify these triggers can be quite effective as part of an asthma remediation program, but because of COVID-19 and privacy issues, they would like to be able to identify these triggers in a remote manner. So we've been working with BCHN to come up with a solution that we believe is novel, believe meets their specifications and can enhance their asthma program. And this is outlined here and detailed in our proposal. I'll just briefly describe it. So it has 2 components. One is to identify the asthma triggers through the use of low-cost air quality sensors. And I have outlined kind of how this would be done in the figure below, where we would use multi-pollutant data to identify asthma triggers in the home. For example, we know that combustion sources can exacerbate asthma. This can include a gas stove, a cigarette, incense, candles. We can identify these sources through sensing of particular pollutants associated with those sources. That could be nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter. So we plan to use this multi-pollutant data to have a holistic characterization of the environmental exposures that are occurring within the home, allow us to pinpoint the sources that are prevalent, allow us to evaluate the exposure, and then relate that to the asthma symptoms that are documented by BCHN. The second part of the program or of the proposal is to try to enhance the mitigation of asthma through use of portable air purifiers. So BCHN already has a very well-established home-based asthma program, and we want to enhance that by using portable air purifiers that have HEPA filters and carbon filters that can effectively remove different types of pollutants from the air. And we believe this is an effective solution because it does not require expensive retrofits to the home environment, to the HVAC system, to exhaust systems, anything like that. One of these units can be placed in the bedroom or the living room, and I think it's a rather non-invasive solution. So in terms of our collaboration, we have discussed this in the proposal. So both Purdue and BCHN will be responsible for different components of this project, and we'll be working together. I would rather spend time here responding to feedback from the judges regarding our approach. So one was regarding the role of BCHN, and we feel that we have developed a very strong collaboration with them over the past few months. We've had several Zoom calls, Shah and I with Tashi and others, and they have provided extensive intellectual input to our project, and we believe that is very valuable. They've shared many resources with us, and we have learned a great deal about their home-based asthma program. So we believe that we will work together closely in executing the project, working on community outreach in the Bronx area, and evaluating the effectiveness of the proposed mitigation strategy, which is the portable air purifiers. And we are thankful for the one reviewer that noted that this is truly a collaborative effort. So I'm very happy in working with Tashi. She has been very responsive, and I believe that the strong communication that we have established already is a basis for long-term success. In regard to the placement of the air quality sensor, we decided that we will pick a standardized location so we can better compare the data. And we identified that in most of these studies looking at exposure to asthma triggers, the bedroom is the location that is commonly used because of the amount of time that is spent in that particular microenvironment. There are some questions about home Wi-Fi. So our plan there is that these sensors need to communicate with the cloud through a Wi-Fi network. So if that's not available, we'll either use a local Wi-Fi hotspot, a cellular network, or in the kind of the last case option, we would just use manual downloading of the data from the device. So I think either of these three options should work and should address that comment. In terms of novelty, yes, studies have used low-cost air quality sensors and portable air purifiers. I think the combination of the two is rather unique. We'll also be making use of open source outdoor air quality data because much of our exposure to outdoor air pollution occurs indoors because we spend about 90% of our time indoors. So the combination of these sensors placed in the home environment, outdoor air quality data, and the portable air purifiers, I think is a unique combination. One comment was regarding real-time feedback to the patient. So one thing about these sensors is that they transmit the data to an app available on your phone. So you can see the spikes in concentrations of particulate matter or carbon monoxide right on your phone. So we think that could be a novel addition to the project where the patients can actually kind of evaluate their indoor atmospheres quite nicely through this app that's freely available with the sensor.
Brandon, we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. In terms of actually how we're going to identify these asthma triggers, so we're going to use the multi-pollutant data to try to, as proxies for different sources and different loss mechanisms. So carbon dioxide is a good proxy for amount of ventilation. Is there an open window? How many people are in the particular home environment? We can use the cycling of relative humidity to identify when the air conditioner is on versus when it's off. We can use total volatile organic compound data to identify if somebody's spraying something in the house, like a personal care product or an air freshener or a cleaning product. And I detail some other criteria below. So we believe that we can use this data to really characterize quite well the particular sources and loss processes that are affecting these asthma triggers. In terms of the undergraduate team, so they will help create asthma trigger reports for BCHN. So I think this will be a very important part of the service learning experience for them. The IRP protocol will develop over the summer. We believe that this project has minimal risk. The privacy of the patients will be protected. The data will be securely stored through Pure. And then we do plan to publish a peer-reviewed journal article in collaboration with BCHN on this project. In terms of impact potential and the scale-up strategy, again, I'll spend time here just responding to the feedback. So there were some questions or comments about trying to engage health authorities, political representatives, and we do believe that's a very good idea, and we plan to do that. And BCHN is in support of that. And Tashi indicated that's something that she would like us to do, especially as the borough president and city council. So we think we can do that through sharing of documents and also giving presentations over Zoom. In terms of this just being a localized issue in the United States, asthma is certainly a global issue. So the solution is generalizable outside of the US. And this is a proof of concept study. It's a small study, but we believe we can leverage this into a larger study through the NIEHS Research to Action program, which we believe is a logical follow-up to this project because it's community-based. And we do feel that there's a lot of potential in the future to look at real-time monitoring of asthma symptoms with smartwatches and things like that if we were to have a larger funded project. And we believe that while, yes, a portable air purifier is a no-brainer solution, most air pollution mitigation strategies, one could argue, are no-brainer solutions. Doesn't mean there's a lot of research potential here in looking at implementations of these different strategies, how effective they are in the actual home environment, and so forth.
So thank
you, and I hope I addressed some of the questions and comments from the judges in their review of our proposal.
Thank you. The questions are coming in fast and furious. So the first one is, beyond the pilot study, what's the plan for sustainability? Longer term, who will pay for the asthma trigger monitors? What incentives are there for people who elect to put this in their homes, and who pays for those incentives?
I think that with COVID-19, I think we have learned about the importance of indoor air quality. I think the public is much more attuned with indoor air pollution. So I think that the ability for patients to actually see what they're inhaling into their bodies is something that would be of value to them. I think that would be an incentive. Another thing that we are looking at is, we would donate the portable air purifier. And I think that if they can see in real time that their exposures are being reduced, to dust and allergens through use of this portable device, I think that would also be something that would engage the patient, and they can see that this thing is actually helping them. In terms of long-term sustainability, our first plan in terms of what we would do if this project were to be funded is to pursue the NIEHS Research to Action program. So we feel that this is something that we would be able to work on with BCHN because it does involve a community-based organization that has a strong connection with the community. In this case, BCHN has already established that, and we feel that that would be the most logical next step to start scaling this up. And I think that part of that project would be to demonstrate that these portable air purifiers and the sensor data can, is actually effective in mitigating the symptoms. So that's something that we would want to demonstrate and show that we can do this at a scale. And I think that this is something that can be scaled up because the sensors and portable air purifiers are rather cheap. I think if we're looking at, what modifications would need to be made to the home, renovating an entire HVAC system, with the filtration and everything, and the amount of ventilation could be very expensive. And many homeowners, or if you're just renting an apartment, you can't go in and, swap out the filter and put in a HEPA filter because the blower inside the HVAC system can't handle the pressure drop. So there's things like that that are very difficult to do. So we feel by putting this portable air purifier in the home, it's a logical, solution that does not require any expensive renovations to the building itself. And we do think that will help with scaling this up. Although we do feel that a lot of these issues need to be addressed by the health authorities and politicians, in that if the housing stock is a big issue here, or outdoor air pollution is a big issue, which we believe that it is, these are things that we need to work with politicians to work to address. And that was one thing that was noted by the reviewers, and that Tashi and BCHN are in favor of, because these are outside of the scope of what we can do as researchers.
So you actually got kudos for taking so much time to carefully respond to the written comments from the judges. It's very helpful and provides clarity on the design and approach. So another question is, there could be a self-selection problem with the study, in that those who are motivated to share their situation will participate in the study. So how are you addressing that, I guess, or accommodating that?
Yeah, that is a good point. So I think one thing to begin with is that we don't envision that there'd be much difficulty in recruiting patients for this study, because BCHN has developed such a positive working relationship with people who suffer from asthma in the community. So we think that's one thing that will not be a barrier. I do understand that there is a bit of a self-selection, because in a sense, people are sharing data about their home environment, which is very personal to them. And some people may not be comfortable with that, but we do feel that the alternative, which was actually somebody, a community health worker, entering the home, going around, taking pictures, and documenting potential sources of these asthma triggers, we feel that's a bit more invasive than what we're trying to do here, where we would just ship a portable air quality monitor to the home. So there's not somebody actually coming in, searching around the bedroom or the bathroom. That's one of the things that BCHN noted was an issue. So we do feel that by getting this sensor data, it's kind of less of an invasion of privacy than somebody actually walking through the home, going through your personal space, because we have this non-identifiable, air quality data. So we do think that may help in terms of incorporating this into the existing home-based asthma program.
Thank you. And we're actually out of time, but I do encourage you to look through the chat box, because some of the judges asked some really great questions, and Sonak is just responding, saying that you're kind of answering them as you go, but do take a look at the chat box for other questions that we couldn't get to. Okay, we're going to move on to our final semi-finalist team, those that are presenting on the overuse of the hospital system, again with our friends on the East Coast.
Hello, let me share my screen.
Thanks, Nicole.
Can you see that?
We sure can.
Okay, great. All right, so I am Dr. Nicole Adams. I'm a clinical assistant professor in the School of Nursing. I'm going to let each of my team members introduce themselves. We're going to go around here. But a little bit about me, I have over 15 years of experience at the bedside in hospitals, primarily in the emergency department and in leadership roles. I conduct community engaged research and have experience with community paramedicine programs in Central Indiana. Today, we're going to be talking about addressing overuse of emergency and hospital care through community paramedicine programs and how we can help them do that more efficiently. Dr. Kong?
I think you're on mute, Dr. Kong.
Sorry. My name is Nan Kong. I'm also from the Purdue side. I'm associate professor of biomedical engineering. My research expertise lies in healthcare systems engineering. I have had many years of experience leading Purdue students in digital health solution development, including mobile application and dashboard development. So now we turn to our partner, Mr. Cohen and Mr. Straw.
Thank you both. My name is Nan Cohen. I'm a paramedic and a community paramedic with about 30 years of experience in both hospital-based and community-based emergency medical services. Over the past 5 years, my focus has turned to community-based paramedicine and mobile integrated healthcare, looking to expand the reach of EMS into the homes of folks that are underserved, and looking to collaborate and innovate with our current partners to provide a better level of service to our communities, more patient-centered with an eye on improving population and community health.
Hi, I'm Rich Straub. Thanks for having us today. Hannon summed us up very well there, so I won't go into too much, but I run our community paramedic program here. I'm also a paramedic of 8 years in New York City and Westchester County, and we're looking forward to working with you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's get back to Nicole.
All right, thank you. So Empress is a top tier EMS provider located in Westchester County, New York. I'll ask our partners at Empress again to give us a brief overview of their organization.
Thank you. So we're a mid to large size EMS agency, as mentioned, in the centered in Yonkers, New York, which is a suburb of New York City. We provide both ALS, BLS, critical care emergency services in New York City and Westchester County, as well as several innovative community paramedic programs looking at reducing hospital stays, readmissions, and other types of gaps needing to be filled. We respond to about 150,000 calls a year and have again transitioned towards more of a community-based approach, as we see about 25% of those patients probably doing better in the home.
Thank you. So the challenge is that highly complex patients with multiple chronic conditions like congestive heart failure, COPD, diabetes, and mental health conditions, and there's few resources, often use the emergency room and ambulance services because they cannot access primary and specialty care in a timely manner. The Empress Mobile Integrated Health Unit is a community paramedicine program that provides in-home visits to help patients manage their conditions, coordinate appointments, and avoid costly hospital care. They do this in partnership with local hospitals where these patients are frequently admitted. The challenge for them is managing 60 patients efficiently and effectively. They simply cannot visit 60 people each day. Many of their patients have limited minutes on their cellular phones, making daily phone calls to the patients an unreasonable request. And Wi-Fi is very limited in many of their low-income homes.
Now it's me again. We talk about our proposed solution. We will create a mobile application. This mobile application will acquire self-reported health status assessment data in a user-friendly manner from each customer of Empress. The assessment is question-based, including, for example, what you feel today. Do you feel chest pain? Data transmission to Empress will utilize text messaging service as much as possible. As mentioned by Empress, this has been the main issue. So with this solution, it does not use a lot of cellular data. On the other side, we will create a dashboard for Empress, the organization. This dashboard will contain sufficient visuals on key customer needs so it can help guide the paramedics to address patients with greater needs on any given day. We like to point out that in the current market of mobile health IT solutions, apps are mainly designed for medical officers and dashboards are not designed for mobile health. Now get back to Nicole.
So this project is using a community engaged approach to development. So the proposal began with an interview with Empress to learn about their program, patients, and primary challenges in managing their population and attaining their goal of reducing hospitalization. We proposed a solution and a narrative description of how the app and dashboard would fit into their workflow, and Empress endorsed that they could incorporate this and make it successful. When funded, we will travel to New York to work one-on-one with the Empress paramedicine team to design a dashboard with functionality that suits their needs. We will also meet with focus groups of their patients to learn about their needs, concerns, and challenges related to using the app. Meanwhile, we will start the technology development. Our Purdue team will include 2 PIs, 1 graduate assistant team manager, and a group of undergraduate students from engineering and nursing. Empress EMS and their customer feedback will be incorporated during every cycle of the development. We could rely on Empress to ask a few key clients to review the app for ease of use and comfort level as we refine the design, or return to New York for additional focus group trials. Lastly, we will assist Empress with technical assistance to roll out the app to their existing new patients. We will provide a timeline and schedule for each component of the system to ensure stepwise incorporation in a logical and seamless fashion. We will also provide training materials and to give their clients on downloading and using the app, as well as possible scripts the paramedics may use as they instruct their clients. We will provide instructions on the dashboard and its features to Empress and troubleshooting and technical support throughout the rollout.
Next slide, please. Okay, it's me again. As evident, our solution will be highly impactful to Empress EMS. We propose not only to create the solution, but to implement it and then measure the impact on the outcomes of the patients in aggregation using facility level data. A pilot implementation at Empress EMS will provide the data needed to calculate the return on investment and further pricing. It will also provide a proof of concept study for the technology feasibility of our solution to the market of need. As for scale up, this app we know will be designed specifically for the Empress population, but it's very easy to alter the questions in the app. So the alteration would be easily done in a future application without making changes to the foundational concepts. And these alterations will give us the opportunity to incorporate additional biometric information from customers, better monitoring customers' health status, therefore. In addition, the dashboard, yes, will be designed specifically for Empress population, for the Empress organization. We can easily change its design with incorporation of additional business metrics such as parametric workflow. We also like to point out our solution is expected to be attractive to many EHR vendors who focus on community paramedicine and mobile integrated health. We plan to approach such vendors like Health Call. This is a EHR vendor based in Crown Point, Indiana. They provide EHRs to community paramedicine programs across the country because this product is not linked to any EHS. It would be implemented regardless of the EHS used by the program. Therefore, this way, we can eliminate the barriers of implementation on EHS incompatibility. Together with expanding the market reach of our solution, we'll also explore various angles of pushing the research and development. These angles include analytics, improving the prediction of each customer's need, data warehousing, sharing data with other healthcare organizations, providing services to the customers in a more integrated manner, Internet of Things, for example, deploying additional ubiquitous sensors at customers' home and transmitting the signals without much concern on the limited broadband connection. These activities will better prepare us for external grant applications. Thank you. Now
we
ready
have
for
we have about 1 minute left. Oh, thank
questions.
you. Right on time. Thank you. So the first question is Empress a for-profit or a not-for-profit entity?
We are a for-profit entity, but we work as a municipal contracted 911 provider in a municipal fashion in New York City and Westchester County.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, client cell phone access, namely low number of available call minutes. That was mentioned as a current issue. Could you elaborate why an app might be seen as a solution? How will clients have access to the app? Will they be provided with cell phones and data plans, et cetera?
So we think that, yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
So we are striving to create an app that does not use a lot of data. Currently, if you look at some of the other mobile apps for health monitoring, they include very lengthy questionnaires and they take a lot of time to complete, and there's a lot of data to upload. We're looking to really streamline that down to the bare minimum required to determine how critical it is to visit that patient today versus maybe tomorrow.
Yes, I think let me just add a little bit. I think the data processing is really, data acquisition is very important. The app, we view that as a portal of submitting the data.
So then next on that same theme, language and literacy availability may make the use of an app a varied experience for different community groups. How are you accounting for that?
So that's a key piece of that app development and those focus groups, and really looking at the client base to ensure that we are putting everything into reading levels that are appropriate and in using language that is the kind of language that people are familiar with, and not medicalizing things or using terminology that's not part of their normal vernacular.
How does this compare to off-the-shelf EMR apps, which are currently available? What's the key functionality that you're adding that doesn't exist? Since there may be several apps out there that could do some of what you're suggesting in a roundabout way.
Sure. A lot of those apps, like I stated before, have a lot of questions. They're asking for a lot of information, and it's really meant for primary healthcare teams for managing their populations. So when now that data comes in, it's reviewed by a nurse or the physician in the office, and it helps them guide their care of the patients from that perspective. Community paramedicine programs operate on a different structure. They're not writing prescriptions or scheduling appointments for people to come in and see them. They're meeting people in their homes to help them better assess their health status and maybe make small changes. They may help them make an appointment to see a primary care provider if that's what's necessary at the time. So it's a very different platform in a way because of the type of assessment they're doing of the data.
And so how do the proposed activities connect to the patient's other more routine clinical activities?
So we're trying to, let me think about that one real quick. We're not trying to displace other activities. We're trying to augment how Empress interacts as they already do with those other activities, and just kind of streamline their activities so that they can really target the patients of highest need.
And then kind of in that same vein, how will you motivate patients to continue to report their data if they're not having any interaction or being motivated to do that reporting? What's the incentive to keep them reporting?
So they will get notifications and reminders to make sure that they enter their data on a daily basis. And then the dashboard will not only list who really needs to be seen, but right behind that is who hasn't been seen. And so that they become the second tier. If they have not actually laid eyes and gone into the home of patient B, and then they will be listed there next after they deal with the high acuity patients for the day. Then that patient B will be the next one to be seen so that they can keep touching base and keep them engaged in their program.
Okay.
I see at early stage implementation is really the key. We're able to access data and acquire data from a community of need. That's the key. And the question from Sana is very much appreciated. I think once we have the data, this is still what you asked is still very much a very active research area, how to incentivize customers, how to incentivize these people from community to self-report their data and can better generate health-related intelligence. So I think after we do the implementation, so with further support from the federal, at the federal level, I think some of the questions will be addressed later.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your concise answers. I'm actually going to wrap us up because we're at the 12:30 mark and we have to either eat lunch or go do other things. So I want to thank every single one of our semi-finalists for putting in so much thought into your presentations today and to being so concise and straightforward in your presentations. Thank you again to our implementing partners for being here. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do meaningful and impactful work without your support. Thank you to our judges for taking time and asking those hard-hitting questions. Now everyone knows why you all were selected as our subset of judges. I want to remind every single one of you to join us for the events taking place each day the rest of this week. It's the same time every day, 11 a.m. Please register to join us and certainly join us on Friday for when the announcements are made of who the winners are. If you have any questions, you know how to reach Rhonda and I now that you've met us virtually. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you again, everyone.